My husband left me for his mistress. Then my lawyer asked what he never knew. Sign it today, Claire, and we can all stop pretending this marriage has a future. My husband placed the divorce petition beside my coffee, then reached across the restaurant table and took another woman's hand. Vanessa Cole was 37, 12 years younger than me, and still wearing the diamond bracelet Robert had once claimed was a gift for an important client. She turned her wrist so the stones caught the light. Robert didn't look ashamed, he looked impatient. We've already found an apartment, he said. Vanessa is leaving her company, and I want a clean start. Dragging this out won't change anything. It was our 25th wedding anniversary. He'd chosen the same restaurant where he proposed to me, requested the same corner booth, and ordered the same bottle of wine. Then he brought his mistress and asked me for a divorce. I looked at the papers. Robert had already filled in most of the proposed terms. He would keep his consulting firm, his retirement accounts, and the downtown condominium he had purchased 6 months earlier through a company I had never heard of, would keep our house in Richmond, provided I accepted the mortgage and waived any claim against his business. Vanessa gave me a sympathetic smile. I know this is painful, she said. But sometimes holding on only makes everyone suffer longer. I removed my wedding ring. Robert leaned back, satisfied, believed surrender had always been my natural response to conflict. It was wrong. I placed the ring on top of the petition. I'll sign a fair agreement, I said. Not this one. His smile disappeared. 3 days later, after reviewing my financial records, my divorce attorney stared at me across her desk and asked the question that changed the entire case. Claire, she said slowly, does your husband honestly have no idea that you're worth nearly $40 million? I had known Elaine Foster since college. She was 51, sharp-eyed, practical, and incapable of disguising disbelief. Her law office occupied the second floor of a renovated brick building near the James River. The shelves behind her desk held family law journals, framed photographs of her 2 daughters, and a ceramic mug that read, "People lie. Documents don't, ****. That afternoon, the mug seemed to be judging me. Robert and I had signed a prenuptial agreement before our wedding. He knew I came from a family that owned manufacturing property in Virginia and North Carolina. He knew my late father had left me shares in a private company. What he did not know was how much those shares were now worth. He thinks my family business failed years ago, I said. Elaine lowered the valuation report. Why? Because part of it did. That is not the same as being worth $40 million. It wasn't worth that when we married. How much was it worth then? Maybe $2 million on paper. Most of that was tied up in land, equipment, and debt. And now? The operating company was sold 12 years ago. I retained the real estate and licensed several patents through a holding company. Elaine tapped the report. Your holding company owns 4 industrial properties, a medical packaging patent, and a minority stake in a distribution business. Yes. It also holds municipal bonds and an investment portfolio worth over $11 million. Yes. And Robert never asked? He stopped asking years ago. Elaine sat back. I knew what she was thinking. How could a man live with a woman for 25 years and not know? The answer was complicated. In the beginning, Robert knew almost everything. We met when I was 26 and working as a financial analyst for a regional bank. He was a newly licensed architect with more confidence than clients. My father, Thomas Whitaker, owned Whitaker Container Works, a family company that manufactured specialty packaging for hospitals and pharmaceutical suppliers. Tea was not glamorous. Our factories smelled like paper dust, machine oil, and hot plastic. My father wore steel-toed boots more often than dress shoes. My mother handled payroll from a windowless office and remembered every employee's spouse and every child's graduation year. Robert admired them. He seemed to designed an addition to our Richmond facility. He spent weekends at my parents' house. He told my father he wanted to build something that lasted. When Robert proposed, my father insisted on a prenuptial agreement. Robert was offended. My father explained that the company employed 400 people and that my ownership interest could not become part of a future divorce dispute. You're not protecting Claire from Robert, my mother said. You're protecting 400 families from a judge who doesn't know them. Robert eventually signed the agreement kept premarital assets, family company interests, inheritances, and income retained inside those assets separate. Marital earnings and jointly titled property would be divided under Virginia law. For the first 10 years, Robert and I discussed everything. Then my parents died within 18 months of each other, and why mother went first, after a stroke. My father died the following year from complications of lung disease. Their deaths left me responsible for a company already struggling against larger competitors. Robert had launched his own design and development consulting firm by then. His business demanded travel, client dinners, and endless networking. Our son, Daniel, was in middle school. Our daughter, Lily, was 10, left the bank and spent 4 years trying to save Whitaker Container Works, a failed at least. That was how Robert told the story. The truth was less simple. I closed one factory, sold the operating division to a national supplier, and negotiated job offers for most of our employees. I kept the land beneath 2 facilities and licensed a sterilization-resistant packaging design my father had developed with an engineer. The sale paid our debts. The retained assets produced modest income. Then healthcare manufacturing expanded. The packaging patent became valuable. The industrial properties appreciated. A distribution company that licensed our process grew across the Southeast, did not become rich overnight, became rich quietly, through contracts, lease payments, reinvested income, and 20 years of saying no when other investors urged me to sell. Robert knew about the original sale. He knew I still handled some family paperwork. But as his firm became successful, he stopped asking for details. Whenever I mentioned a lease renewal or patent negotiation, he changed the subject. "Claire, you don't have to prove anything anymore," he once said. "Your father's company is gone." I tried to explain that the company was gone, but the assets were not. He kissed my forehead and told me to let the lawyers handle it. Eventually, I did. Samuel Grady, my father's longtime business attorney, managed the holding company with me. The assets remained separate under the prenuptial agreement. I reinvested nearly every dollar. Robert and I lived on his business income and my salary as chief financial officer for a non-profit hospital foundation. Assumed my family money had dwindled to a few properties and retirement savings. Let him assume it. That was my first mistake. Elaine studied me. "You hid your wealth." I didn't lie about it. You let him believe something false because correcting him became uncomfortable. That sounds like an attorney's definition of hiding. It's a friend's definition. I looked toward the window. Below us, cars moved along the wet street. It had rained all morning, and the sidewalks reflected the red glow of traffic lights. Robert hated talking about my family business, I said. He treated it like evidence of my failure. And you preferred that to being accused of threatening his success? Yes. Elaine nodded once. That I understand. Robert's firm, Mercer Design Strategies, had become one of the most respected development consulting companies in Virginia. He advised hotel groups, retirement communities, and mixed-use real estate projects. Business magazines photographed him in unfinished buildings with rolled blueprints under one ARM.AT home. He complained that my family money made people underestimate him. When his first major client came through an introduction my father arranged, Robert insisted he had earned the account without help. When my mother lent us money for our first house, he repaid the loan early and refused to attend Thanksgiving at my parents' home that year. He wanted independence. But only from my contributions. He accepted years of unpaid help from me without discomfort, reviewed proposals, corrected budgets, entertained clients, hosted holiday parties, and used my banking contacts to introduce him to lenders. When he needed cash to cover payroll during the 2008 recession, I arranged a loan secured by one of my separate properties, repaid the loan. He never mentioned it again. By the time his firm became successful, Robert had revised our history. He built the business, supported him emotionally. My family company failed, chose a comfortable non-profit job. Repeating those statements made them sound true. Does Vanessa know? Elaine asked. About my assets? Yes. I doubt it. Does Robert know you continued paying certain household expenses through your separate company? I looked at her. What expenses? Elaine opened another folder. Property taxes on the lake house. Daniel's graduate school tuition. Lily's down payment. Your mother-in-law's assisted living fees. My stomach tightened. How did you know about those? You gave me the statements. I didn't realize they were relevant. Everything is relevant when one spouse claims he carried the family financially. Robert's proposed agreement contained a paragraph stating that he had been the marriage's primary financial provider, had read it 3 times without understanding why it upset me so much. Now I did. It wasn't merely inaccurate. It erased me. Robert had paid the mortgage on our Richmond home and most regular household expenses. His income funded vacations, restaurants, and the lifestyle he enjoyed displaying. My separate assets handled the obligations no one admired. When our daughter Lily's teaching salary did not qualify her for a mortgage in Northern Virginia, I gave her $110,000 for a down payment. When Daniel entered a physical therapy doctoral program, I paid his tuition so he would not begin his career with 6 figures of debt. When Robert's mother, Margaret, needed memory care after a fall, her savings covered less than half the monthly cost. Robert said his business could not absorb another fixed expense because he was expanding, paid the difference. For 4 years, Robert told his sister he was taking care of their mother and never corrected him. What exactly does Robert believe you own? Elaine asked. The Richmond house with him. Half the lake house. My retirement account. Maybe $1 million in inherited assets. He thinks you're comfortable. Yes. He does not understand you could purchase his consulting firm several times over. I don't want his firm. That is not the point. Elaine removed her glasses. The good news is that most of your wealth appears protected by the prenup. The bad news is that Robert may challenge the agreement when he realizes what is at stake. On what grounds? He could argue inadequate disclosure before marriage. My father gave him the financial schedule. Worth $2 million 25 years ago. He may argue the growth is marital. The agreement says appreciation and retained income remain separate. I know. It's a strong agreement. But people become creative when they discover they left money behind. Then don't tell him yet. Elaine leaned forward. We have to disclose assets during divorce. I know. You cannot hide them because he behaved badly. I'm not asking you to. You're asking for timing. Yes. She considered this first. We investigate his disclosures. Then we exchange formal financial statements. Your assets will be listed accurately, but we will not volunteer explanations before required. How long? A few weeks. Robert had asked for a quick divorce, decided to give him one. At first, I needed to know what he was trying to take with him. The first smaller reveal arrived 6 days later. Elaine's forensic accountant found that the downtown condominium was not owned by Robert. It was owned by Blue Elm Properties, a limited liability company formed by Vanessa Cole. Robert had transferred $240,000 from Mercer Design Strategies to Blue Elm over 14 months. The payments were labeled consulting expenses. Vanessa worked as marketing director for one of Robert's largest clients, a company called Fairmont Senior Living. Her employment contract prohibited her from accepting vendor payments. Blue Elm had no employees, no business license beyond the basic state registration, and no clients other than Robert's firm. The money paid the down payment on the condominium where Robert and Vanessa planned to begin their clean start. When Elaine showed me the records, I felt strangely calm. I had expected evidence of an affair. I had not expected evidence of fraud. Could these be legitimate marketing fees? I asked. Possibly, Elaine said. But they were not disclosed in Robert's financial statement, and Vanessa appears to have recommended his firm for 2 Fairmont projects during the same period. Kickbacks? We are not using that word without more evidence. What word are we using? Undisclosed related party payments. That sounds polite. Court prefers polite facts to dramatic conclusions. I looked at the transaction dates. The first payment occurred 3 weeks after Robert began complaining that our marriage lacked intimacy. The second came the same month he canceled our trip to Charleston because of a client emergency. The third occurred on my birthday. Did he use marital money? I asked. His company earnings during the marriage are potentially marital, depending on the valuation and the prenup. More importantly, he has claimed the firm has limited cash and a declining value. These transfers contradict that claim. So he wants me to waive an interest in a business he has been using to fund Vanessa. Yes. I thought of Vanessa at the anniversary dinner, turning her wrist beneath the light. Sometimes holding on only makes everyone suffer longer. She had spoken as though she were releasing me from something, not taking anything. Do we confront him? I asked. Not yet. Elaine smiled without humor. You said you wanted a fast divorce. The fastest way is to let him remain confident until we understand everything. I followed her advice. At home, Robert behaved as though the divorce were already complete, had moved most of his clothes to the condominium, but he returned whenever he wanted something. A box of tax records. His grandfather's watch. A bottle of bourbon he claimed belonged to him. Each visit became an inspection. Have you contacted an appraiser? He asked one evening, standing in the kitchen doorway. For what? The house. Elaine is arranging it. You don't need Elaine involved in every detail. She is my attorney. I know, but we agreed to keep this cooperative. You presented me with a one-sided agreement at our anniversary dinner. His expression tightened. I was trying to avoid unnecessary expense. For whom? Both of us. I closed the cabinet. Robert looked around the kitchen. The room had been renovated 8 years earlier. I chose the cabinets, stone counters, and wide windows overlooking the garden. Robert took credit for the design whenever guests complimented it. Vanessa thinks you should keep the house, he said. Stared at him. Why is Vanessa discussing our property? She understands that you're emotionally attached. How thoughtful. She is trying to be compassionate. Is that what she called it? Robert rubbed the back of his neck. You're making this uglier than it has to be. I'm standing in my kitchen. You know what I mean. No. I know what you want me to mean. He stepped closer. Claire, we were unhappy for years. Were we? His eyes shifted. That movement told me more than his answer. Robert had been dissatisfied. He had never been unhappy enough to leave until Vanessa offered admiration without history. We became roommates, he said. We shared a bed until 4 months ago. Physically present is not emotionally connected. Did Vanessa teach you that sentence? His face darkened. This is why I couldn't talk to you. You turn everything into an interrogation. I started asking questions after you began lying. I didn't plan this. You transferred money to her company for more than a year. He froze. I had not intended to reveal that I knew. Elaine would be furious. Robert's expression changed slowly. What are you talking about? Blue Elm Properties. He recovered too quickly. That was legitimate consulting work. What did she consult on? Brand strategy. For your firm or for Fairmont? Both. And she disclosed the payments to her employer? That is not your concern. It becomes my concern when the money purchases the condominium where my husband lives with her. Robert looked toward the hallway, as though someone might be listening. You should not accuse people of financial misconduct because you're angry. I asked a question. You hired someone to investigate me. I hired a divorce attorney. Same difference. He picked up his bourbon. Do you know what Vanessa said would happen? She said you would try to punish us. Vanessa also believes compassion means choosing which house I receive. She isn't trying to take anything from you. She is living in a property purchased with undisclosed funds from your business. It is her property. Then why did you pay for it? He stared at me. For 25 years, Robert had relied on my desire for peace. He expected me to retreat when his voice sharpened. I didn't. Finally, he said, the payments were advances against future work. Then the contracts will show that. He walked out without saying goodbye. The front door slammed. My hands began shaking only after he left. I sat at the kitchen table and called Elaine. She answered on the first ring. What happened? I mentioned Blue Elm. There was a pause. Why? He brought Vanessa's opinion into the house. That is not a legal justification. I know. What did he say? I repeated the conversation. Elaine sighed. He'll start cleaning up records. Can he? Some. Not bank records. Not tax filings. Not messages already stored on servers. I'm sorry. No, you're hurt. Hurt people sometimes reach for truth before strategy. That sounds almost kind. I'll be less kind if you do it again. The next morning, Robert's attorney requested mediation within 10 days, was still pushing for speed. That told Elaine he believed the evidence could be contained, prepared, gathered tax returns, property records, retirement statements, trust documents, and every financial schedule connected to Whitaker Legacy Holdings. The name sounded grander than the company felt. Its office occupied 2 rooms above an insurance agency in Richmond. Samuel Grady worked there on Tuesdays and Thursdays with 1 paralegal and a part-time bookkeeper. Samuel was 78 and had represented my father for nearly 40 years. He wore bow ties, drove an old Volvo, and distrusted anyone who used the phrase passive income. There is nothing passive about collecting rent from a plastics company, he liked to say. They call every roof leak an emergency. When I told him about the divorce, he removed his glasses and said, "Your father never trusted Robert." That would have been useful information. He trusted him to love you. He did not trust him around ownership. Why didn't he tell me? Because parents who oppose a marriage usually strengthen it. Samuel handed me the original prenuptial agreement and why father had required Robert to retain independent counsel. Robert's attorney had certified that he received full disclosure and sufficient time to review the terms. Attached to the agreement was a valuation of my ownership in the family company. The document also included a clause addressing future reorganizations, sales, replacements, and proceeds. It's clear, Samuel said. The current holding company is the direct successor to the assets listed here. Elaine thinks Robert may challenge it. Robert may challenge gravity if he believes it owes him money. I smiled despite myself. Samuel opened a locked cabinet and removed several old files. There is something else. He placed a loan agreement on the table. 15 years earlier, Whitaker Legacy Holdings had loaned Mercer Design Strategies $650,000 during the recession. Remembered the loan, did not remember the amendment. Robert had repaid $400,000. When his company struggled to make the remaining payments, I agreed to extend the term. The amendment converted the unpaid balance into a 5% non-voting ownership interest if the loan was not fully repaid within 5 years. The deadline passed 9 years ago. Whitaker Legacy Holdings owned 5% of Robert's company. Why didn't I know? I asked. You signed the amendment. I signed hundreds of documents after Dad died. You were exhausted. Did Robert know? He signed it too. I looked at his signature. Robert knew my separate holding company owned part of Mercer Design Strategies. Ed omitted that fact from his proposed divorce agreement, where he asked me to waive any claim against the business. More importantly, he had valued his company as though my 5% interest did not exist. What is the stake worth? I asked, depending on the true value of the company, between $900,000 and $1.6 million. And it belongs to Whitaker Legacy Holdings. Yes. Separate property. Yes. Samuel watched me carefully. Claire, this is not a trap we created for divorce. It was a commercial consequence of an unpaid loan. I know. Robert will say you are using family money to punish him. He says that about everything. The facts will survive his opinion. I carried the loan file to Elaine's office. She read it twice, then she looked at me. He didn't know you were rich, but he knew your company owned part of his company. He probably assumed the interest was worthless. Because he told himself your business no longer mattered. Yes. Elaine closed the file. This case is no longer about dividing a house and retirement accounts. Robert has understated his business, diverted funds, concealed related party transactions, and omitted a separate corporate shareholder. What does that mean for a quick divorce? It means we can still move quickly if he becomes reasonable. And if he doesn't? We make reason expensive. The mediation took place in a neutral conference center outside Richmond. Robert arrived with his attorney, Stephen Blake, a polished man in his early 60s who specialized in high-asset divorces. Vanessa did not attend, but her influence entered the room with Robert. He wore the gray suit she liked. He had lost weight. His hair was cut shorter, and he carried a leather portfolio I had given him for his 50th birthday. Began in separate rooms. The mediator, retired Judge Helen Dawson, moved between us carrying proposals and warnings. Robert's first offer was almost identical to the anniversary papers, would transfer his share of the Richmond house to me, would assume the mortgage, would sell the lake house and divide the proceeds. Each person would keep individual retirement accounts. I would waive all claims involving Mercer Design Strategies. He would waive any claim to my remaining family assets. The phrase made Elaine smile. Remaining, she said. He still thinks there's almost nothing there. Doesn't his attorney have my disclosure? Not yet. Formal exchange is tomorrow. Today is voluntary mediation based on the initial schedules. Is that normal? It's optimistic. Judge Dawson returned. Robert believes the marriage can be resolved today if Claire avoids expanding the dispute. Elaine asked, how does he define expanding? Business valuation, reimbursement claims, alleged misconduct. Alleged? The judge gave her a look. I am carrying language, not endorsing it. Elaine slid the Blue Elm records and loan agreement across the table. Please ask Mr. Blake whether his client disclosed these. The judge left. She returned 20 minutes later. Robert's next proposal increased my share of the lake house proceeds and offered $150,000 in cash. In exchange, I would release all claims relating to business transfers and ownership interests. He knows the 5% stake is real, Elaine said. Is he frightened? He is buying certainty. Should I take it? No. Judge Dawson looked at me. Ms. Whitaker, you understand that refusing settlement may increase fees. I understand. What do you want? The question seemed simple. I had spent weeks thinking about property, disclosures, separate assets, and fraud, but what did I actually want? I want an accurate valuation, I said. I want the money transferred to Blue Elm restored to the marital estate if it was improperly diverted. I want my company's ownership interest recognized. I want the house. And I want the divorce. Spousal support? No reconciliation? No public apology? Elaine glanced at me. No, I said. I want correct numbers and a final order. Judge Dawson nodded. That is clearer than most answers I receive. At noon, Robert requested a joint session. Elaine advised against it. Agreed anyway. Robert sat opposite me at the conference table. His attorney began. My client believes emotion is driving positions that are financially disproportionate. Elaine answered. Your client transferred marital business income to his girlfriend's shell company. Robert's jaw tightened. Blue Elm is not a shell company. What services did it provide? Elaine asked. Stephen raised one hand. This is not a deposition. Robert looked at me. You know my company needed marketing support. I know you already employed 12 marketing professionals. Vanessa provided access to a specialized market. Her employer's market. She understood the industry. And recommended your firm while receiving money from it. Stephen interrupted. Claire, accusations of commercial misconduct could damage multiple people. Is that what you want? No, then why are we discussing this in a divorce? Because Robert used marital earnings to purchase Vanessa's condominium. Robert leaned forward. You received the house. No. You offered me the house with a $430,000 mortgage while keeping an undervalued business. You never cared about the business. I cared enough to lend it $650,000. That money came from your father. The company belonged to me. You inherited it. And then managed it for 20 years. Robert gave a humorless laugh. You hired Samuel to manage it. I made every major investment decision. According to you. The room became quiet. I looked at the man I had married. He did not know me anymore. Perhaps he never had. He knew the parts of me that supported his preferred story. The practical wife. The failed heiress. The woman who handled details while he built important things. Anything that contradicted that story became invisible. Stephen opened Robert's financial statement. Mr. Mercer's firm has an estimated value of $3.2 million after liabilities. Elaine placed a valuation proposal beside it. Our preliminary analysis places it closer to $11 million. Robert shook his head. Absurd. The business paid you $780,000 last year, Elaine said. That includes pass-through income. It also made unexplained payments of $240,000 to Blue Elm. Robert looked at me. This is revenge. No, I said. Revenge would be trying to destroy your firm. I am asking you to value it honestly. You have more money than you need. My heart stopped for half a second. Elaine's gaze sharpened. Robert knew. Maybe Stephen had received part of the formal disclosure early. Maybe Robert found documents at home. Maybe Samuel called someone. How much do you think I have? I asked. He looked toward his lawyer. Stephen answered carefully. Mr. Mercer recently became aware that Whitaker Legacy Holdings may possess more substantial assets than represented during the marriage. Represented by whom? By you. Elaine sat forward. Claire made no false representation. Your client had access to annual tax returns showing separate property income. Robert turned to me. The tax returns never showed the total value. They showed the income. You filed separately for years. Because your accountant recommended it. You let me believe the family business was gone. The operating company was sold. You know what I mean. Yes, I said. You mean I stopped trying to make you listen? He stared at me. Stephen spoke again. Given this discovery, my client believes the prenuptial agreement may not be enforceable. Elaine smiled. There was nothing pleasant in it. On what basis? Insufficient financial disclosure and changed circumstances. The agreement contains full disclosure certified by Mr. Mercer's independent attorney. The disclosed value was dramatically different. Because 25 years passed. Mr. Mercer contributed to the marriage while Claire accumulated substantial separate wealth. I looked at Robert. How did you contribute to Whitaker Legacy Holdings? I supported you while you handled it. You mocked it. I paid our living expenses. And my assets paid for Daniel's tuition, Lily's house, your mother's care, the lake house taxes, and your company loan. Robert's expression changed when I mentioned his mother. What are you talking about? Your mother's memory care bills. I paid those. No. Whitaker Legacy Holdings paid $4,600 a month for 4 years. He looked genuinely confused. That money came from our investment account. Our investment account did not have automatic payments to Greenhaven Memory Care. I opened the folder Elaine had prepared. Here are the transfers. Robert read the first page, then the second. His face lost color. His mother's care had cost more than $220,000. He'd paid none of it after the first 4 months. Remembered the night he told me his firm could not continue covering the cost. Sat at our kitchen island with his head in his hands. I feel like a terrible son, he said. I told him we would manage. I never told him how. At the time, I thought protecting his pride was love. Now he looked at the statements as though they were an accusation. You should have told me, he said. I tried. When? The first year. You said you didn't want another lecture about my family's money. That is not permission to hide it. No. It was permission for me to solve the problem alone. You were always comfortable with that part. Judge Dawson stepped in. This session is no longer productive. Robert ignored her. How much are you worth? Elaine answered before I could. That information will appear in formal disclosures. I'm asking my wife. Former wife soon, I said. How much? Approximately $38 million, depending on property valuations. No one moved. Robert's fingers remained on the statements. 38 million? Yes. He looked at me as though I had confessed to a second life. In some ways, I had. When did this happen? Gradually. You sat across from me every morning and never told me? I sent you the annual reports for years. I thought those were legal summaries. They were. You never said the number. I stopped saying things you didn't want to hear. He stood so quickly his chair rolled backward. This mediation is over. Stephen caught his arm. Robert. No. She deceived me for years. Elaine's voice remained calm. Your client brought his mistress to an anniversary dinner and presented a fraudulent financial proposal. He may want to be careful with the word deceived. Robert looked at me. The anger in his face covered something deeper, fear, not fear that I would take his business, fear that the hierarchy inside our marriage had never been what he believed. He thought success made him powerful and my silence made me dependent. Now every memory had a different value, every expense, every crisis, every time I said, I handled it. Robert left the room. The mediation ended without agreement. That night, Lily called me. She was 29, an elementary school counselor in Arlington. She had inherited my mother's gentle voice and Robert's habit of pacing during difficult conversations. Dad says you hid millions of dollars from him, she said. Dad says many things when he is angry. Is it true? That I have significant separate assets? Yes. How significant? Enough that the divorce attorneys are now very interested. Mom. About 38 million. Silence then, what? I held the phone away from my ear. I understand the reaction. $38 million? Approximately. You gave me $110,000 for the house. Yes. You acted like it was a serious decision. It was. But it's less than 1% of money can be serious even when you have more of it. Lily sat with that. Why didn't you tell us? I wanted you and Daniel to build independent lives. You could have told us without giving it to us. I know. There it was again, the quiet admission. Had spent so long guarding other people from the emotional effects of money that I had turned secrecy into habit. Lily's voice softened. Dad says you made him feel like a fool. I did not control how he treated information. But you knew he believed you had almost nothing. Yes. Why let him? Because whenever I discussed my assets, he treated them as a threat. So you made yourself smaller. The sentence hurt, not because it was cruel, because my daughter understood in seconds what I had avoided for years. Yes, I said. Did that help the marriage? No, then why did you keep doing it? I thought peace was the same as love. Lily began crying quietly. Mom, why didn't you tell me things were bad? You were planning your wedding. That was 3 years ago. Then you were buying a house. Mom. I didn't want you to worry. That's not your decision. I closed my eyes. Lily was right. My silence had not only protected me from conflict. It had denied my children the chance to know me honestly. I'm sorry, I said. She took a breath. Did Dad really pay for Vanessa's condo? His company transferred the money. That isn't an answer. We're investigating. Daniel says she's been telling people Dad will marry her as soon as the divorce is final. I didn't know. Would you care? I considered lying. No, I said. I would hurt. That isn't the same as wanting him back. Lily was quiet again. Dad wants Daniel and me to issue a statement saying the divorce should remain private. You should do what feels right. Do you want us to defend you? I want you to avoid becoming weapons. That was the first decision I made differently from Robert. Spent the next month recruiting allies. He called Daniel, Lily, his sister, former friends, and members of our church. He said I had hidden wealth, manipulated family finances, and prepared to ambush him once he fell in love with someone else. Did not mention Blue Elm, did not mention the unpaid business loan, did not mention that he had taken Vanessa to our anniversary dinner. Robert's mother, Margaret, called from memory care on a clear afternoon. Her dementia had progressed, but she still recognized voices most days. Claire, she said. Yes, Margaret. Robert says you two are separating. We are. That boy never knew when he had enough. I closed my eyes. Margaret sometimes spoke with startling clarity. Did he visit you today? I asked. He came yesterday. Or maybe that was last month. He loves you. He loves being a good son where people can see. The statement sounded so much like something she would have said before her illness that I almost laughed. Then her voice changed. Are you still paying the lady? What lady? The one who helps me shower. Yes. The facility handles it. Robert said he pays. I know. He always liked being thanked. I swallowed. Margaret had once been a librarian. She raised Robert and his sister alone after her husband died in a car accident. She understood pride because she had survived on it. Did I thank you? She asked. You didn't know. Then thank you now. My eyes filled. You're welcome. She lowered her voice. Don't give him all your money. I won't. Men buy foolish things when they are frightened. What did Robert's father buy? A boat. Was he frightened? No. He was foolish. We both laughed. For a moment, illness released her. Then she asked whether my mother was coming for Thanksgiving. After the call, I sat in my car outside the office and cried, not because Robert left, because love, memory, duty, resentment, and money had become so tangled that I no longer knew which grief belonged to which loss. The major reveal came during discovery. Elaine subpoenaed Mercer Design Strategies' internal emails, accounting records, and communications involving Blue Elm. Robert fought the request. The judge allowed it. The records showed that Vanessa had not simply received money from Robert's firm, she had been building a competing company with him. Robert planned to transfer several Mercer Design Strategies clients, employees, and active proposals into a new firm called Cole Mercer Development, intended to leave his existing company burdened with debt, reduced revenue, and the divorce valuation. After the divorce, he and Vanessa would operate the profitable new business. Together, the plan explained everything: why he pushed for speed, why he undervalued Mercer Design Strategies, why Vanessa was leaving Fairmont. Why he wanted me to waive all claims involving the firm, was not merely leaving the marriage, was moving value out of reach before I could see it. Elaine placed the company formation documents on her desk. Cole Mercer Development was registered 8 months ago. Before he asked for divorce. Yes. Before the condominium purchase. Yes. And Vanessa owns 51%. Robert owns 49% through a trust. Why not directly? To keep his name away from early filings. I looked at the client list. Several companies had worked with Robert for more than a decade. Fairmont Senior Living appeared at the top. Has business transferred yet? Some preliminary agreements were signed. Several include start dates after the expected divorce. He planned this carefully. He planned parts of it carefully. What did he miss? Your 5% ownership in Mercer Design Strategies. The separate property stake changed everything. As a shareholder, Whitaker Legacy Holdings had rights to company information and potential claims if Robert diverted corporate opportunities for personal benefit. He thought the interest expired. Elaine said, did it? No. Samuel filed annual notices preserving it. Robert's own accountant acknowledged the stake in internal tax documents. So he knew. He knew enough to hope you didn't. The pattern was becoming clear. Robert did not believe I was unintelligent, believed I preferred peace to scrutiny. He built his plan around my silence. What can we do? I asked. Several things. Seek an injunction preventing transfer of clients and assets. Demand a full valuation including diverted opportunities. Bring a shareholder claim through Whitaker Legacy Holdings. Report Vanessa's payments to Fairmont if legally appropriate. That could end her career. It could. Would it be revenge? It depends on what the facts show. She may have violated her employer's conflict policies. I looked at Vanessa's emails. One message. She wrote **** Claire will take the house and disappear. Women like her care more about appearing dignified than winning, ***. In another ***. Once Robert is free, the old company can collapse. We only need the relationships, Women like her wondered what Vanessa believed she knew about me. A middle-aged wife with quiet clothes and a non-profit salary. A woman who set tables, remembered allergies, and let her husband speak first. She had mistaken restraint for emptiness. We proceed, I said. Elaine watched me. With everything? With accurate valuation, the shareholder claim, and the injunction. Fairmont should receive factual notice through counsel. No threats. No publicity. And Vanessa's career? Belongs to Vanessa. The injunction hearing was scheduled 2 weeks later. Before it occurred, Robert came to the Richmond house, did not have a key anymore, had changed the locks after discovering the new company, rang the doorbell 3 times. When I opened the door, he looked past me into the hallway. We need to speak. Your attorney can call Elaine. Not about legal strategy. Then about what? Daniel. My stomach tightened. Our son had been injured in a car accident outside Charlottesville. The injuries were not life-threatening, but he had a broken wrist, cracked ribs, and a concussion. Robert had received the hospital call first because Daniel's phone listed him as the emergency contact, drove separately to the University of Virginia Medical Center. We found Lily beside Daniel's bed. Our son was 32, broad-shouldered, normally energetic, and furious about being forced to wear a hospital gown. I'm fine, he said immediately. You look terrible, Lily replied. Thank you. Robert moved to the bed and placed one hand on Daniel's shoulder. For several hours, the divorce disappeared beneath parental fear. Listened to doctors. We discussed pain medication, follow-up appointments, and whether Daniel could return to his apartment alone. He could not. Lily's house had stairs. Robert's condominium had no guest room because Vanessa had converted it into an office. Daniel came home with me. Robert looked offended. I can make space. You said Vanessa has clients coming tomorrow, Daniel said. She can reschedule. I'm going with Mom. The decision was practical. Robert heard it as rejection. In the hospital parking garage, he stopped me beside my car. You're using this to turn the children against me. Daniel has broken ribs. You know what I mean. No, Robert. I'm tired of knowing what you mean when you refuse to say it clearly. He stepped closer. You sent Fairmont a notice about Vanessa. My company's attorney sent factual information regarding payments involving a shareholder-owned business. She's suspended. I didn't know. You destroyed her job. She accepted money from a vendor she recommended. She was going to resign. Then the suspension should be temporary. You are enjoying this. No, don't lie to me. I looked at him. I am not enjoying watching the father of my children dismantle his life. But I will not protect you from the consequences of a plan designed to cheat me. You don't need the money. This is not about need. It is always about money with you. I almost laughed. Robert, who had transferred marital funds to his mistress, concealed a new company, and pushed for a false valuation, was accusing me of caring too much about money. No, I said. It is about truth. Money is simply where you wrote the lie down. He stared at me, then his voice lowered. I was going to leave Mercer Design Strategies because I felt trapped. By whom? You. The clients. The history. Everyone expected me to remain the man I was at 30. Vanessa offered reinvention. She believed in me. She believed in Cole Mercer development. That isn't fair. Is it inaccurate? Robert looked away. I opened the car door. Daniel needs me. He needs both of us. Then come visit him. Do not bring legal arguments into the house. For the next week, Robert visited our son every afternoon. Vanessa came once. She stood in my living room holding a container of soup from an expensive grocery store and looked uncomfortable beneath the family photographs. Daniel thanked her politely. Lily did not speak to her. I invited her into the kitchen while Robert helped Daniel shower. Vanessa placed the soup on the counter. I didn't know the money came from shared assets, she said. I closed the refrigerator. Which money? The condo payments. Robert's company earned the money during our marriage. He told me the business was his separate property. The business was formed after we married. He said the prenup protected it. The prenup protects my family assets. Vanessa looked toward the doorway. He said you agreed to keep what was in your own names. Did he show you an agreement? No, he showed me one at dinner. After you arrived. Her cheeks flushed. I didn't know he was going to do that. You still stayed. I thought leaving would embarrass him. I considered the answer. It was possible. Cowardice often disguised itself as courtesy. Why are you here? I asked. For Daniel. You met him once. For Robert. That makes more sense. Vanessa folded her arms. He is losing everything. No. He is losing control of the outcome. You froze the new company. A judge temporarily restricted the transfer of Mercer clients and employees. He can't work. He can continue operating his existing firm. He was miserable there. So he built a new firm before dividing the old one honestly. You don't understand what it's like to watch someone die inside a life they've outgrown. I leaned against the counter. Vanessa, you are describing my marriage to me. She stopped. The kitchen clock ticked between us. She was beautiful, but not in the sharp, effortless way I first saw at the restaurant. That afternoon, her makeup was uneven and her hands were dry around the knuckles. She looked frightened, not evil, not innocent, to a woman who had made choices based on a flattering version of reality. He said you were cold, she whispered. He said you were compassionate. Her eyes lowered. Maybe he needed both stories. Yes. Robert entered before she answered. His gaze moved between us. What happened? Nothing, Vanessa said. She picked up her coat. I'm leaving. You just got here. I have a call. You're suspended. I still have an attorney. She left without kissing him. Robert watched the door close. Then he looked at me. What did you say? The truth. That is not an answer. It's the only one you ever needed. Daniel recovered slowly. Caring for him reminded me of the ordinary intimacy Robert and I had once shared: medication schedules, ice packs, quiet meals, late-night conversations when pain made sleep impossible. One night, Daniel asked, "Did Dad ever love you?" I sat at the foot of his bed. Yes. How can you be sure? Because love can be real and still fail. That sounds depressing. It's less depressing than believing every failed relationship was fake. He considered this. Would you take him back if he apologized? No, even after 25 years? Especially after 25 years. Daniel looked toward the window. I'm angry at him. You're allowed. I'm also angry at you. I know. You hid things. Yes. You made us think Dad paid for everything. Yes. Why? Because correcting him always became a fight. So you let him have the credit. I thought it didn't matter. It mattered to us. I know now. Daniel was silent. Then he said, "You always made everything look easy." I thought that was my job. It made us think you didn't need anything. The words stayed with me long after he fell asleep. Robert was not the only person who had misunderstood my silence, had trained everyone I loved to believe I could carry weight without feeling it. Then I resented them for not noticing. That realization did not excuse betrayal. It did require change. The strongest reversal came at the final settlement conference. By then, the court had upheld the temporary injunction. Fairmont terminated Vanessa after an internal investigation found she violated conflict of interest policies. 2 other clients delayed transferring work to Cole Mercer Development. Mercer Design Strategies lost revenue because Robert's attention was divided and several employees had learned about the proposed new firm. Robert blamed me. The valuation experts completed their reports. Mercer Design Strategies was worth $9.8 million before considering the diverted opportunities. Cole Mercer Development's contracts and client commitments added another $3.1 million in potential value. The Blue Elm transfers were treated as dissipation of marital assets. Whitaker Legacy Holdings' 5% interest was valued at $640,000 after discounts and company debt. MY separate assets were valued at $39.40 million. Prenuptial agreement remained. Enforceable. Robert had no claim to Whittaker Legacy Holdings. He challenged it anyway. His argument was not that the document was invalid when signed. He argued that enforcing it after 25 years would be unconscionable because I had become vastly wealthier while he contributed to the marriage. Elaine's response was simple. Robert's net worth, even after division, would exceed $4 million. He had a successful career, was not being left destitute, and he had known the family assets were protected. The judge encouraged settlement before trial. He gathered in the same conference center where mediation failed. This time, Vanessa did not exist in the room. Robert wore a dark suit and no wedding ring. His face looked thinner. Stephen Blake appeared tired. Elaine placed our final proposal on the table, would keep the Richmond house and assume the mortgage. The lake house would be sold, with proceeds divided after reimbursement for separate property expenses. Robert would keep Mercer Design Strategies, subject to paying me my share of the marital value and honoring Whittaker Legacy Holdings' 5% stake. The Blue Elm transfers would be charged against his share. Each party would keep separate retirement accounts. No spousal support. The injunction would be modified to allow the new company to operate only with clients and employees not taken from Mercer Design Strategies without fair compensation. Robert read the proposal, then he pushed it away. She gets the house, millions from my business, and keeps $40 million? Stephen said quietly. Robert. No. I want to hear how this is fair. Elaine answered. Claire keeps her separate property. You divide marital property. She accumulated that wealth while I paid for our life. Her separate assets paid significant family expenses and loaned money to your firm. I repaid most of that loan. Not all. Robert looked at me. You planned this. I planned what? To appear dependent while building wealth where I couldn't touch it. The accusation was so detached from reality that I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. I was never dependent, I said. You preferred believing I was. You let me. Yes. He seemed surprised. I continued. I should have insisted on honesty. I should have stopped shrinking my work so you could feel larger. I should have told the children who paid for what. I should have refused to carry your pride as though it were another household bill. Robert's face hardened, but none of those mistakes gave you permission to cheat, divert money, or hide a business. You hid money. I retained separate assets disclosed in a prenuptial agreement and annual tax filings. You never told me their value. You never asked after deciding the answer would threaten you. Stephen touched Robert's arm. We should take a break. Robert pulled away. No. I want her to admit this is punishment. I looked at him. I could demand trial. I could pursue every shareholder remedy, every reimbursement claim, and every dollar your conduct placed at risk. I am offering a settlement that leaves you with your firm, substantial assets, and the ability to rebuild. You call that mercy? No. Finality. The door opened. Samuel Grady entered with a document box. Robert stared at him. What is he doing here? Elaine said, Mr. Grady is here regarding Whittaker Legacy Holdings shareholder position. Samuel sat beside me. He removed a sealed envelope. Before Thomas Whittaker died, he amended the company trust. I turned toward him. You didn't tell me. You did not ask the correct question. That sounds like something my father would say. It is nearly a direct quotation. Samuel handed Elaine the amendment. Whittaker Legacy Holdings' 5% interest in Mercer Design Strategies contained a buyout provision. Robert attempted to transfer substantial business opportunities to a competing entity without shareholder approval. The holding company could require him to purchase its interest at a formula based on the company's highest independent valuation. Robert's face changed as Stephen read. How much? He asked. Samuel answered, approximately $1.4 million. That is double the discounted value. The formula does not apply minority discounts after a diversion event. You cannot enforce that. You signed it. Robert turned to me. Did you know? No, for once, he believed me. Samuel continued. Whittaker Legacy Holdings is prepared to waive the enhanced buyout and accept the ordinary valuation if the divorce settlement is executed today. Stephen looked at Elaine. This was planned. Elaine shook her head. It was discovered during the shareholder review. My client authorized the waiver this morning. Robert stared at me. I had not known the exact clause until that morning, but I had made the decision. The company could demand more, chose not to, not because Robert deserved protection. Because the larger payment might force layoffs at Mercer Design Strategies, harming employees who had no role in his choices. You're giving up money? He asked. Yes. Why? Because your employees did not betray me. The room became silent. Robert looked down at the agreement. For the first time, I saw shame reach him without immediately transforming into anger. Stephen leaned toward him and spoke quietly. They discussed numbers for several minutes. Then Robert asked everyone except me to leave. Elaine looked at me. I nodded. The attorneys and Samuel moved into the hallway. The conference room door closed. Robert and I sat across from each other. No lawyers, no children, no mistress, no audience, just the remains of 25 years. When did you stop loving me? He asked. The question surprised me. I didn't stop all at once. Was it before Vanessa? No, after the dinner? Before that, I think. When I realized you had begun rewriting our marriage so leaving would feel righteous. He looked at the table. I loved you. I know. Do you? Yes. But you loved me most when I helped you become who you wanted to be. That isn't fair. It may not be complete. It is true. He rubbed his thumb against the edge of the proposal. I thought if I stayed, I would disappear. Inside what? The husband. The father. The successful consultant. Everyone knew what I was supposed to be. And Vanessa didn't? She saw possibility. She saw a new company. His mouth tightened. She cared about me. I'm sure she did. You don't sound sure. I think people can care about each other and still build the relationship on dishonesty. He looked toward the closed door. She left. I had suspected it. The Cole Mercer accounts had stalled. Vanessa was fighting Fairmont's termination. Robert's finances had become public through litigation. The future he promised no longer looked effortless. When? I asked. 2 weeks ago. I'm sorry. Are you? I'm sorry you are in pain. I am not sorry she left. He gave a small laugh. That may be the most honest thing you've ever said to me. No. It may be the first honest thing you've been ready to hear. He nodded. I keep thinking about the money. Mine? Yes. What about it? If I had known, he stopped. I waited. If you had known, would you have stayed? I asked. He looked ashamed. I don't know. That is why you didn't deserve to know. The answer landed heavily. Robert leaned back. You think I'm that shallow? I think you confused money with power. Knowing I had more might have made you more careful. It would not have made you more loyal. He closed his eyes. I was angry at you for years. For what? For never needing me. I stared at him. I needed you every day. You managed everything. Because you praised me for being easy. You never asked for help. I asked you to visit your mother. I asked you to attend Lily's school meetings. I asked you to review Daniel's financial aid forms. I asked you to come home before 10. That is not the same as needing me. It was exactly the same. He opened his eyes. The truth hurt both of us. Robert had wanted to be needed in ways that made him feel important, had needed him in ordinary ways. Ordinary need had not felt grand enough. I'm going to sign, he said. I nodded. But not because you beat me. I don't need that story. What story do you need? None. That is the point. He looked at me for a long moment, then he opened the door and asked the lawyers to return, signed the settlement that evening. The divorce decree was entered 42 days later fast, by the standards of a contested high-asset divorce, not painless. Not clean, but final. The consequences continued long after the judge signed. Robert retained Mercer Design Strategies. The company survived, although several clients left and he reduced staff. Because the settlement required fair compensation for transferred business, Cole Mercer development never became the effortless new beginning he imagined. Robert eventually closed it. He sold the downtown condominium 18 months later. The sale price barely covered the mortgage, taxes, and legal expenses. Vanessa sued Fairmont for wrongful termination, then settled confidentially. She moved to Atlanta and joined a smaller real estate marketing company. He never spoke again. I did not wish her happiness, did not wish her pain. Indifference arrived slowly and felt more freeing than forgiveness. Robert's relationship with our children changed. Daniel remained angry for nearly a year. He saw his father occasionally but refused to discuss finances or the divorce. Lily tried to maintain peace until Robert criticized me at her Thanksgiving table. She placed her fork down and said, "Dad, Mom is no longer responsible for making your choices sound reasonable." Robert left before dessert. He apologized to her 2 weeks later, not to me. That was all right. Children do not need their parents to reconcile. They need them to stop demanding loyalty tests. I changed too. The first change was small. Stopped paying bills anonymously. Margaret's memory care expenses continued through a trust one established directly for her benefit. I told Robert and his sister exactly what the trust covered and how long it would last. I did not need praise, I did need truth. When Lily asked whether I could help fund a counseling program at her school, we discussed the amount, purpose, and expectations openly. When Daniel considered opening a physical therapy clinic, I offered to invest rather than give him money, prepared a business plan, rejected the first version. He called me ruthless, then he improved it. Whitaker Legacy Holdings became more than a private investment vehicle. For years, I had kept the company small and invisible because invisibility felt safe. After the divorce, I hired a full-time team and expanded our industrial properties into affordable manufacturing spaces for medical suppliers and small businesses, created a training fund for employees displaced when my family's original factory closed. Samuel attended the announcement wearing a green bow tie. "Your father would object to the marketing budget," he said. "My father objected to every budget." Correct. He would be proud. I became board chair of the hospital foundation where I once worked. At my first meeting, a wealthy donor interrupted a female finance director 3 times. The 4th time, I said, "She is answering the question you asked. Let her finish." The room became quiet. The finance director finished. It was such a small act. Thought about how many years I had waited for someone else to say those words for me, so I began saying them, not only for women. For anyone whose competence was mistaken for support work, for anyone whose silence had been used as evidence that they had nothing to contribute. 18 months after the divorce, Robert asked to meet. He chose a coffee shop near the Richmond train station. He arrived early, his hair was grayer. He wore a navy jacket instead of a business suit. Without the polished armor of his professional identity, he looked more like the young architect I met 27 years earlier. Ordered coffee, placed an envelope on the table. Inside was a check from the sale of the condominium. "What is this?" I asked. "Half the net proceeds. The settlement assigned the property adjustment to you." "I know." "Then I don't want it. It was purchased with company money during the marriage." "That was already accounted for." "Not completely." I looked at the amount $38,000. Tiny compared with the assets we divided, enormous as an admission. "Why now?" I asked. "Because I keep telling myself the settlement was unfair. Then I remember that I planned to move clients into a company you couldn't touch." He stared at his coffee. "The check is not enough." "I know that. It isn't about the amount." "No." I slid the envelope back. "Use it for your mother. Her trust covers everything. Then take her somewhere she might remember." Robert's eyes filled. "She asks about you." "I call her." "I know." We sat quietly. Outside, a freight train passed beyond the station, metal wheels grinding against the track. "Are you happy?" he asked. "I am becoming honest." "That wasn't my question." "It is my answer." He nodded. "What about you?" "I am becoming less certain." "That may be good." "It doesn't feel good." "Most useful changes don't at first." He smiled. "You sound like your father." "I have been warned." Robert reached for his coffee. "I owe you an apology." "You have apologized." "No. I said I was sorry the night we settled. That was partly fear. What is this? Specific. I waited. I am sorry I made you invisible inside the life you helped build. I'm sorry I treated your competence like a service I was entitled to. I'm sorry I used Vanessa to avoid facing what I had become. He paused, and I'm sorry that when I discovered your wealth, my first thought was what it meant for me. I looked out the window. A young couple stood on the platform with 2 suitcases between them. The woman laughed at something the man said. He reached for her hand. Once, Robert and I had looked like that. The memory no longer felt like a demand. Thank you, I said. Do you forgive me? Not completely. He nodded. Do you think you ever will? I don't know. Forgiveness is not a contract with a deadline. That sounds like Elaine. She bills more when she says it. He laughed. For one moment, we were familiar again, then the moment passed. Gently, Robert stood. I should go. Boston? Norfolk. I'm meeting a client. Good luck. At the door, he turned. Claire, for what it's worth, I wouldn't have stayed because of the money. I believed he wanted that to be true. Maybe someday it would be. For what it's worth, I said. I'm glad we never had to find out. 2 years after my divorce, I returned to the restaurant where Robert had presented the papers, not for an anniversary. For Lily's 31st birthday, she sat beside her husband, Aaron, with Daniel across from them. Margaret's condition had worsened, but Robert brought her in a wheelchair for an early dinner. Robert and I sat at opposite ends of the table. There was no Vanessa, no legal proposal, no performance of a perfect family. There were awkward pauses, medication reminders, disagreements about dessert, and an argument between Daniel and Lily about whether their grandmother had already received a birthday card. IT was imperfect. IT was honest. When the server brought the check, Robert reached for IT.so did. Lily covered both our hands. I'm paying, she said. Robert protested. I did not. Lily looked at me and smiled. You taught me money should be discussed clearly. I created a monster. You created a school counselor with a rewards credit card. After dinner, Margaret asked me to walk with her near the restaurant entrance. Robert pushed her wheelchair while I walked beside them. Outside, warm lights reflected across the river. Margaret looked at Robert. Did you marry Claire yet? He stopped. Dementia had moved her backward into another year. Robert looked at me. I waited. No, Mom, he said. She decided she deserved better. Margaret frowned. Then you should improve. Robert laughed quietly. I'm trying. She turned to me. Don't wait too long. Men improve slowly. I've noticed. For one brief second, her eyes cleared. She reached for my hand. You were good to us, she said. I squeezed her fingers. So were you, sometimes. She smiled. IT was not complete forgiveness. IT was better. IT was true. That winter, I sold the Richmond house. Everyone was surprised. Robert assumed I would keep it forever because I fought to retain it during the divorce. But wanting the right to choose was not the same as wanting the house permanently. The building held too many versions of me, the young wife arranging second-hand furniture, the mother packing lunches before dawn, the daughter handling factory calls from the laundry room. The invisible investor signing documents after midnight. The betrayed woman sitting at the kitchen table while her husband carried bourbon to another woman's condominium, did not hate the house, and no longer needed it to prove that I had not been displaced, bought a smaller home near the river with large windows, a library, and a garden I could manage without hiring a crew. When the movers carried in the last box, I found my old wedding ring inside a velvet pouch, had removed it at the anniversary dinner and left it on the petition. Robert must have returned it with my belongings. For months, I considered selling it. Instead, I had the gold melted and reshaped into a simple pendant. Not to honor the marriage. To acknowledge that an object could change without pretending it had never been something else. Or the pendant the day Whitaker Legacy Holdings opened its first workforce training center. The building stood on land that once belonged to my father's factory. Inside, former machine operators trained younger workers in medical packaging, equipment maintenance, and warehouse safety. A photograph of my parents hung in the entrance, and why father wore work boots, and why mother held a payroll ledger. Neither looked wealthy, they looked responsible. During the opening ceremony, A reporter asked why I had remained so private about the company's success. For a long time, I said, I thought privacy protected what mattered. What changed? I learned that silence can protect the wrong people too. After the ceremony, I stayed behind while employees arranged classrooms and tested equipment. Samuel found me beneath my parents' photograph. You did well, he said. You told me Dad would hate the marketing budget. He would. Pride and disagreement can coexist. I looked at the photograph. Did he ever worry that I would lose everything? Frequently. The company? No. Yourself. I turned toward him. Samuel adjusted his bow tie. Your father thought you were too willing to make other people comfortable. He might have mentioned that. He did. When? Usually after you left the room. I laughed, then I cried. Samuel stood beside me without pretending not to notice. Grief had become gentler over time. It no longer arrived as a collapse. It arrived as recognition. Why parents had known parts of me I had forgotten. Robert had known parts and chosen to ignore the rest, and why children knew more now because I finally allowed them. Wealth had not rescued me. It had existed throughout the marriage, hidden beneath my fear of conflict. The real inheritance was not the money. It was the responsibility. To stop making myself smaller so other people could feel secure. Robert did not lose me because Vanessa stole him. A person cannot steal a loyal spouse. He left because admiration felt easier than intimacy. And because a new woman knew only the version of him he wanted to display. Vanessa did not lose because I was richer. She lost because a relationship built around secrecy eventually demands another lie to survive. And I did not win because my assets were protected. I won the moment I understood. That dignity was not quietly accepting whatever other people decided to leave me. Dignity was knowing what belonged to me and why work. And why voice and why history and why choices. One spring morning, I sat on the porch of my new home watching sunlight move across the river. My phone rang. It was Lily. Mom, she said. Dad is telling Daniel you once considered buying Mercer Design Strategies. I never considered it. That's what I said. Why would he think that? Because you could. I smiled. For years, Robert believed money mattered only when he controlled it. Now possibility itself unsettled him. Tell Daniel the truth, I said. I never wanted his company. What did you want? The answer came easily, an equal marriage. Lily was quiet. Then she said, I'm sorry you didn't get one. So am I. Are you lonely? I looked through the open doorway. My house contained no boxes belonging to a man who planned to return. Oh, unpaid bills hidden beneath newspapers. Oh, conversations I was afraid to begin. There were books on the floor, fresh flowers on the table, and a half-finished business proposal beside my coffee. There was room for people. There was also room for silence that belonged only to me. Sometimes, I said. But I'm not abandoned. After we ended the call, I carried my coffee into the garden. The pendant rested against my chest. The gold had once been a ring, a promise, and evidence of a life I thought would last forever. Now it caught the morning light in a different shape. I did not remove it. I did not look away, and for the first time, I understood that beginning again did not require me to erase what came before. It only required me to stop living inside it. For more exciting content, please subscribe and follow us.